Welcome to part 3 of my Back to Homeschool series. If you are new here, I'm Shayla, a second-generation homeschool mom with 6 kids from 12th grade all the way down to kindergarten. I've been at this for 14 years and counting. As a second-generation homeschooler, I have been in the homeschool community for 38 years, and I have been a mentor for new homeschool parents since 2017. In part 1 of this series, I shared our homeschool room renovation and organization, and I began answering subscriber questions. Part 2, I answered more subscriber questions, and in today's video, I am answering subscriber questions about ADHD. I personally have ADHD, and I have got 2 kids with it. At the end of this video, I'm answering questions about how to start preschool. Check out the chapters below in the description if you're looking for something specific. Let's get started with the Q&A. I'm an ADHD mom homeschooling ADHD children. How can we recover our days when frustrations and mental blocks arise? That is a really good question. I'm actually still trying to find answers to that question myself. Breaking out of the whole mindset that school needs to be started by such and such time and done by noon, that's probably one of the most helpful things to throw out the window if you have ADHD and if you have ADHD children. In our home, it helps that we are pretty structured. We try to start school by, depending on what time of the year it is, we try to start school by 8:30 or 9. And I'm sorry, my kids are having lunch out there. You can hear them kind of having a little bit of a party, it sounds like. But starting by a specific time, and I have got most of the kids to the point where we're pretty good about starting pretty close to on time. And we don't always get done at a specific time though. Sometimes when we're learning, we get off on a trail and we want to keep going on that trail for a while. I'm assuming that this question has to do, yes, she says frustrations and mental blocks. Okay, so with mental blocks, one of the best things is to set it aside. Maybe tomorrow, maybe later on today, it'll make more sense. Time of day is everything in our home. So we find that math and language arts are best done, wrapped up before noon. If you wait till afternoon for those subjects, it seems like it takes way more brain energy to get them done, and by then the kids' brains are tired. So we find math and language arts, get them done in those morning hours before lunch, and as long as we do that, usually we don't have as many frustrations and mental blocks with those subjects. When it comes to bad attitudes though, that's another issue. Bad attitudes, if you have a bad attitude or if your kids have bad attitudes, I find that with those, what we will do to get back the day, if I need to apologize, I will. Usually that helps fix whatever situation and whatever frustrations were there because of that. If it's the kids' frustrations and bad attitudes, unless it's a really big deal, unless the kid really did something and they need to be put in timeout or something, I kind of try to ignore it and just get back on. I guess you could say we try not to make too big of an issue of them. Something else that I find really makes a big difference is homeschooling during non-traditional times of the day. So I know a lot of moms are really big into, yes, our homeschool days, we only school like 3 hours a day or 5 hours a day. Okay, that doesn't work in our home, so we will school all day long if we need to, with breaks at where we need to, if that makes sense. So we take breaks when we need to, even if it means when we're eating dinner, someone's going to be reading, one of the history books that we didn't get to during the day, or we will take a break in the day if we need to, even if it means we're going to be doing this after dinner tonight. So basically we fit things in where they fit. We always have a schedule that we try to go by, and a lot of times we do, but we're not afraid to fit those subjects in where they will fit if we have to do that. I hope that makes sense. Basically just get it done where it works and where we can, but still trying to adhere to this schedule because that is important. I feel that that's important, especially when you have ADHD kids, because that is an area where ADHD people in general struggle. And so having a set schedule that is on the refrigerator and backed up in a few other places around the house is extremely helpful, and it's extremely helpful to try to stay on schedule because that also makes less room for frustrations. And when everybody knows what's expected when, it just seems to keep some of those frustrations and mental blocks at bay. But as I said, when they do happen, we just get it done in the day when we can, when it does work. Okay, so we got Stephanie. Again, homeschooling with ADHD, processing disorder, dealing with grumpiness. I think somebody else, was it Jennifer? No, it was somebody else. Okay, so there is something else I want to say. Yeah, I had a couple children who, for 2 years, every time you would tell them, it's time to do school. One of them, it lasted 3 years. One of them, it lasted 2 years. Every time that you would say it's time to do school, they would just get grumpy and in a bad mood, and it got to be very discouraging for me as the teacher, and eventually they worked through it. We don't have that problem anymore. It did end. It took a very long time. I just stayed persistent and consistent, and we would do school, and they would go through the little grumpy. Have any of you guys ever watched Trey Kennedy do his middle school kid routines where they're like, finally I pointed out, I'm like, would you do that if you were in a public school? Would you do that in front of the teacher? Would you do that in front of the other kids? And you could see the light went on, the little cogs are turning in their head, and you could see, no, they wouldn't do that. They would not do that if they were in a public school setting with a teacher and in front of other kids. So every time they would do it, I would just say, would you do that? Would you disrespect a teacher that way? Would you do that in front of the other kids? Because if you did that in front of children in a public school, they would, they would think it's pretty, you'd be embarrassed. I also pointed out, you're making a really bad habit, and someday you could be, working for somebody in a job somewhere, and if you pull that, to your boss, that's not going to go over very well. And so then I got them to thinking again. And then other times I would make them do a couple of chores until they felt like doing their school with a good attitude. I would give them a job they didn't want to do, like go change the sheets on your bed, make sure your room's picked up. Just little things like that they don't really want to do, and give them a task that they don't think is pleasant. That solves that problem pretty quickly. That seems to be one of the things that solved it, or it helped them to find a better attitude very quickly. The happy-souled woman wants ways to keep a child who has ADHD focused during everyday life, like doing chores and following simple directions. Yeah, I'm going to be really honest with you here. My ADHD kids need reminders daily. Still, I hear it's just how it is. A lot of people that have ADHD children try to compare their homeschool routine or what they would like their homeschool routine to be with people's families that don't have ADHD, and you really can't do that. It'll be a big letdown. Having ADHD children in the mix is almost like having an extra 3 children. So don't try to compare what you would like your ADHD homeschool to look like with somebody that doesn't have it. There is not enough support out there for ADHD homeschooling. I'm just going to be honest and say that. And I think that's why a lot of ADHD homeschool moms with ADHD children get as frustrated as we do, and the anxiety mounts. Anxiety is one of the classic things that come with having ADHD. And so I think a lot of it does come from, too, just comparing and thinking, well, this is what I would like it to be like. This is what it's like for everybody else I know. But why can't we seem to get to that place? I know there's kids out there that don't need reminders every day. I'll be honest though, especially the ADHD kids, need reminders every day to do some of the same things. They're not bad kids. It's just the way it is. All right, Emily is asking, do you ever deal with kids who zone out as soon as you walk away? Or rather, do any of your kids need you to stay by their side to get any work done in school books? I've been homeschooling about a year. I think I'm going crazy for my youngest. This has got 6 thumbs up, so we've got other people that want to know the answer to this question too. Yes, I do have this problem. I learned after years of sitting by their sides and prodding them along that if I just give them this stack of books, I say, here's your work for today. Or if I make a checklist for them, that's what I do now, I make a checklist. I say, here's your checklist. If you have any questions, ask me. I realized if they were going to a public school, they would not have a teacher sitting by their side saying, do this problem next, now do this problem next, and finish that problem, you only did half of it. I realized I had just really been spoiling, pampering my kids, and they didn't need my help. And when I would sit by their side, they would pretend they needed way more help than they actually did. So one of the ways you can start weaning off of this And you can actually start trying it with kids as young as 7. I found in my experience, kids are not ready to start doing independent work until they're probably, it depends on the child, depends on how well they're reading and where they are developmentally. But it seems between 7 and 10. Okay, some kids it does take much longer than others, but that seems to be in that age range they start to become able to be more independent and much more capable of doing schoolwork without you sitting next to them the whole time. If they can't read very well yet, then you are going to need to help them a lot more than you would if they can read well. So what I would do is I would, with my kids when they're around 7 and I know they can read the instructions, I will start saying, why don't you try to do this page or do as much as you can, do all the problems on this page that you can. And I am going to go get some food out of the freezer for lunch. I probably could have started doing that with my 3 oldest children around 2 years sooner and could have had more independent children and would have had so much more free time. They were capable of doing that way sooner than I realized. And it took me 3 kids and many years of homeschooling to realize that. So that's how I do it. And that's when you know if there's not very much on the page that they got done. That's how you know. Now, if they zone out, for my kids to zone out, that does help too, because they know they're not going to get any privileges. They're not going to be able to get up and go play and do the stuff that they want until that work is done. Okay, so that seems to solve that problem for the most part. If your child does have inattentive ADHD though, or ADHD, you will have more trouble with this. So one of my questions would be is, can the kid read? Do they have ADHD? Because you didn't specify if they do or don't have ADHD. But I will say that is one of the many aspects to ADHD is they will zone out. Again, like I said, it does get better if they can see the start, like the start of the checklist and the end, and they can see everything they need to get done. I found, especially with ADHD kids, and I'm this way too, if I have a checklist and I can see everything that needs to be done, way better about getting it all done versus if I don't know, there's no navigation, like if I'm taking orders from somebody else and I have no idea where the end is, I'm far less motivated to work fast. At least I was as a child, I remember that. And so I've noticed with my kids, it's the same thing. If they can see the beginning and the end though, they are far more likely to work faster and harder and get it done so they can go do what they want to do. Megan, she says, I'm also a homeschooling mom with ADHD. Do you deal with emotional dysregulation yourself when things don't go right or when things get interrupted? Do you have any tips for coping with this? Okay. Oh my gosh, I just realized that your comment, Megan, has 38 upvotes. So you're not the only person asking this question and needing help with this. And it looks like there's 5 people. Oh yeah, 5 people have also asked. We've got Angela in Alaska, Sarah, Nikita, Heather, and Bree and Free all wanting to know the answer to your question here. Yes, I do have some tips. Let me just grab my notes over here. So I actually wrote down some notes on this. One of them is I do use essential oils. They make a very big difference for me. I know that they're not for everybody, but I wanted to show you guys. One of the ways that I use my oils is I like to put them on a macrame necklace or a leather necklace. I don't like the lava stones or anything like that. When I use macrame or leather, I can smell them all day long, and that's what I like. I like to be able to smell them all through the day. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on. I put some essential oils on it just to help me focus. So essential oils definitely help, and it helps to have them diffusing. I'm a very big believer in essential oils. I've been using them since 1996. I got my master's in herbology in 1997, and I started using essential oils about a year before that. So I've been using them for a very long time. And I am a strong believer in them in that they help. They help to just regulate, calm nerves, moods, however you want to say it. Beyond that, I will say prayer. I pray a lot. I find that praying in the morning seems to make a difference on the day ahead. Another thing that I have written here is taking a break. Taking breaks is so underused.
I don't know how else to say that. What's the word I'm looking for right now? All right, so in any job you get, there's even legal requirements that employees are supposed to get a break. There usually is a break, like a couple hours after you start the job, maybe like 3 hours after you start the job, and then you get like a half-hour lunch break. And if it's like a 10-hour shift, you're going to get another break in there, maybe like 2 hours before quitting time or 3 hours before quitting time. With homeschooling and homemaking, being a stay-at-home mom, there's no breaks. So you have to make them. And I found when I started taking breaks as if I was working, or like when I was working with the public, it made a difference. Breaks make a really big difference. They're there for a reason. I like to take my break between 1 to 3. So there's information. Two of my boys were in cognitive behavior therapy for ADHD to help learn some coping skills. When they were in therapy, one of the things that we learned was kind of like a revelation to me, because I had noticed this all my life, but it's normal for an ADHD person, child, adult, to kind of be shot by 1 o'clock. Between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. That is a normal time for ADHD people because of how we have to compensate throughout the day to act like normal people, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. But we have to overcompensate so much more than other people to get the same amount done and to get to the same places as other people. So it takes more mental strain for us. And so by 1 to 2, 3 o'clock, somewhere in there, people with ADHD just naturally were just like, we're out of steam and we need a break. And I found it doesn't take very long. Your adrenal glands, somebody once told me, she was I don't know if she was a health expert. Her husband was a doctor, I think, but she told me that the adrenals burn out and the adrenals get tired. And if you just right in the afternoon, the early afternoon, somewhere in there, if you lay down and just rest, you don't have to even sleep. If you just lay down and rest for just 10 minutes, that, and 20 is better, I think, but that will help give your adrenal glands rest and you'll have energy to get through the day. So I started incorporating that, and it does work. It makes a huge difference. So that is something I like to use that helps me stay more emotionally regulated. It's also something I'm trying to teach my children to do, because I feel like it's one of those important self-care things that is really important for them to learn too, and will make a difference for them. So I'm trying to build that habit with my kids as well, because it's just a healthy habit. Getting quiet time in the morning also helps me stay more emotionally regulated through the day. Taking B vitamins is something that a lot of people swear by. I always forget to because I have ADHD. But when I do take my vitamins, I do notice a difference. There's also mindfulness techniques that you can use. So I have some posters. You can kind of see some of them on the wall behind me here. They help me stay more emotionally regulated. I have them over on this wall over here, and I have them on the wall behind me. I will try to remember to link those in the description box below. But these posters have all of the principles that I learned through my 3 years of therapy. In therapy, of course, I learned how to put them into practice. I mean, these are just like reminders, but still they're good to have. They're really helpful. So I will come in here if I'm feeling emotionally dysregulated. Sometimes I'll just go lay down on my bed for 5 minutes. That makes a really big difference. I tell the kids, I'm going to be resting. You know where I am if you need me. Go read a book or something while I lay down for a minute. And honestly, sometimes if I start feeling like anxiety is taking over and I'm just getting spread too thin and scattered, sometimes just 5 minutes. Just go lay down on my bed for 5 minutes and just breathe. And that seems to make a really big difference for me. All right, so lastly, I want to talk about apologizing. Some parents, for some reason, especially it seems like in the previous generation, had a really big issue with apologizing to their kids when they mess up. How else is your child going to learn that certain behaviors aren't okay? We're the role models. If they see us be offensive or snippy or lose our patience. And if we don't apologize, they're going to grow up thinking it's okay for people that are in positions of authority and positions above them to treat them that way. And that's not okay. And to think about it when they get into a relationship someday. One of my biggest things is if I do get emotionally dysregulated and I am offensive, I try very hard to always go back and say, I'm sorry. When you do catch yourself being hurtful or offensive, I think it's just really important to apologize. And it also helps you to get better in the future, I think. So that is the last bit I have to say about that. All right, we have Sarah Carpenter. She says she's struggling with her 6-year-old daughter in reading. She has ADHD too. She's great in math and the other subjects. She also doesn't pronounce her sounds exactly right due to scarring on her ears. 6 is pretty young, especially with the ADHD. It's going to take her a little bit longer to grasp some things, most likely, especially since she does have ADHD. Some things she will grasp really quickly. Some things might be harder than others. And this is obviously one thing that is going to be harder for her. I would try to hit it from multiple different angles, but also, okay, so when I say that, I mean videos are really good for kids that have ADHD because it helps keep them engaged long enough to capture the objective or whatever it is. I would highly recommend The Good and the Beautiful for her. I think that would work well. So as I mentioned, I'm a second generation homeschool mom, and I've seen a lot of curriculums. I've tried a lot of curriculums. I've reviewed a lot of curriculums too. And I help other parents find curriculum that will be good for them, even if it's completely different from what I use. So I'm familiar with a lot of curriculums, and I will tell you The Good and the Beautiful for especially those early grades is one of the best I have ever seen. My homeschool mom friends that have a lot of children as well, who are second generation homeschool moms, also are shocked at the quality and what a wonderful job The Good and the Beautiful does. Some people try to say that it is Mormon or LDS. It is not. That is inaccurate. So be sure to do your research on that. It's not. It is non-denominational. So I would switch to something that has some videos so she can actually see and hear. And I would also, you could use music to teach certain sounds. You may or may not like the suggestion of Jack Hartman, but those help children learn letter sounds. Also is nice because you don't have to do all the repetition. Speaking of repetition, that is another thing you can do. You can get your phone out and do a little video of yourself going through the flashcards doing the sounds. That way you can play the video for the next 2 weeks instead of having to sit there every day going on. I don't know about some of you guys out there, but I've got a lot going on and I got a lot of kids. I also just really loathe repetition. So when it wasn't until my 5th child that I realized I don't have to do this every day. I could just take a video of myself doing the flashcards. A goes A for apple, and I could just do that in a video and play it. So there's something you can try too if she just needs a lot of repetition. See, at that age they need a lot of repetition. And I will also tell you one more thing. I didn't make this up, but it's a real thing. If you wait a little longer, a lot of times they will learn all of this stuff you're going in circles trying to teach them within a few months. It can take you like 3 years to teach a kid, all the phonics sounds. But if you wait until they're really ready, it might just take you maybe 3 months, okay? And I didn't make this up, it's a real thing. I don't honestly know why they start children in school, public schools, as early as they do. I think it maybe has something to do with, the parent wanting to go to work, they need a babysitter for their kids. But I have talked with more than one teacher, and it's kind of a unanimous vote. Those early years in public school are basically just, free babysitting. So much of what they teach is, and all that repetition they end up having to do, it's not as necessary. Maybe for some kids it is, I don't know, but for most kids, they will learn everything in a way less time if you just wait till they're ready. So at 6, she's still pretty young. You got a lot of time. I wouldn't stress about it too much yet. Just kind of take it as you can see she's ready for it. Don't strain her eyes. Don't push it too hard that she's getting tired, especially if she has scarring on her ears. you know, keep an eye on all of that. You might get her tested for speech therapy, maybe start working on some things there. I did have one child that needed speech therapy early, but speech therapy might be something you look into. But again, at 6, they are still going to be, a lot of kids are still doing that. They're still pronouncing sounds, you know, incorrectly. So I wouldn't stress about it too much yet. On that note, I have another question similar to it. We've got Emily asking, how did you school when you only had a few young children, preschool aged? Okay, so this is kind of related to that. With my oldest children, I stressed way too much, and I just, wow. With the younger kids, I knew what I was doing and it was a lot easier. With the older kids though, I started them out on a curriculum that was awful for all of us. Everything from the layout to the lessons, I just didn't, like, looking back, it was one of the worst curriculums that I've ever used. And again, I don't like naming. I'm not going to name it because maybe it works for some of you out there, and I don't want to offend people, because if something's working for you, then that's what matters, that's what's important. But for us, it didn't work at all, this particular curriculum. So the first children, it was rough. With my third child, we started out again with, they were textbooks, you guys. They were just regular textbooks, which I would never recommend for a child. There's so many better ways to start teaching a small child than textbooks. I mean, you can use them to a degree. Horizons, those are great for starting to teach preschool age children, I believe. Jen Merkling has Ready for Reading, which is a phonics program, great for preschool. And then I would definitely say like Matthew C. Primer, and then the next 2 levels, those are great to start your kids. You give your kids a really solid foundation with those, and you can start early and just like take it slow. That's my biggest piece of advice, is take it slow. Don't start before they're ready. Go Google it. Look for signs that your child is ready to start learning. You don't want to start them too soon. If you start your child too soon, you can do more harm than good. You can strain their eyes. They could end up needing glasses. You can kill their love of learning. So with preschool age, you know, just start super slow and don't stress about it too much, because they will pick all of those things up when they're ready. So just work with them and kind of at that age, let them lead. I will be really honest with you now. I only had to do preschool with my first 3 children. I have not had to really do preschool with any of my other kids, because by the time I sat down to do preschool with them, like I got the little preschool workbooks. I try to stay away from like the hardcore textbook like things, but I got books for them, and I got all kinds of little things, and I remember sitting down and they already knew everything. And so they knew it from playing with their older siblings. So I only had to teach preschool to like my 3 oldest kids. Harbor and Sprout, I would definitely get some Harbor and Sprout. I always keep their link in my comments below, because I love Harbor and Sprout. They have all kinds of little printable things you can print for your kids. Lynn Seddon's Nature, what is it? It's I'm just going to type it in right now for you guys and look this up. Exploring Nature. Lynn Seddon Exploring Nature. Do that. That is something I love doing with my preschoolers. So I would do that, and I would just like slowly ease in. I would, when you do start easing in, I would recommend Horizons preschool curriculum or The Good and the Beautiful. I'm actually switching over to The Good and the Beautiful myself, because my children like the look of it better. And then I would recommend Matthew C. And you can actually start Matthew C. Primer like as soon as 3 and 4, probably, depending on your child's development. Again, definitely let them take the lead though. If they're getting tired of it, don't push them, because they will learn all of it much faster if you just wait till they're ready. Mamas, I'm trying really hard to grow this channel. I'm really giving this channel my best shot. If you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, would you do me a really big favor? Leave a comment below, or just a thumbs up if that's all you have time for. And if you don't mind, would you share this video with your homeschooling mama friends, and possibly even in some groups, some homeschool groups that are your favorite, that you know would be okay with you sharing the video. Some homeschool groups are kind of stringent on sharing, but if you've got a group that you know that this video would be appreciated in and help others in, maybe you could share it in those groups. I would appreciate it so much. Thank you for watching till the end, and we will see you in the next video.